Welcome to the Grow Senior Care Podcast. Forget about being average. We're here to redefine what's possible in both your business and your life. Get fired up because we're here to help you simplify your life, grow your business with less hassle, and love what you do. Now, here's your host, Jeremy Fuller from Grow Senior Care Marketing.
Hey, this is Jeremy with Grow Senior Care Marketing, and I'm so excited today to interview one of our clients, Brian Nost with Collaborative Home Care. We're going to go through some of the things that he's doing in his home care agency that has brought him from $0 in revenue, 0 clients, to somewhere around $400,000 annual revenue and still growing. So we're excited to interview him, some of the things that he's doing in his home care agency on a day in, day out basis, find out a little bit more about what it takes to go, from nothing to that amount in a short amount of time. So with no further ado, Brian, how's it going?
Good.
Doing good.
How are you, Jeremy?
So I'm excited to really interview you and find out some of these things. Some people may not know this about me, but I am starting a home care agency myself, and we're going to have a partner out of Kansas working with us in a lot of things, but we're starting it here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. But really, people, when they hear of me, they really think that, I'm the digital marketing side of things as far as home care, but I'm going to go down that journey kind of that you've already been down, and so I'm curious on some of these things about, how you got started and, what you do day in, day out. And, I think you'll have some things as well to share with people that's very helpful.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm happy to share my story. So for me, like some other owners, I had a personal experience with home care. And that's kind of how I got introduced to the industry. But my mother, unfortunately, has Alzheimer's, and this is probably going back 6 or 7 years at this point. But we turned to home care when her care became too much for my dad. And just long story short, we just had a very up and down experience. I think largely our issue was that we weren't getting aides trained in dementia care. Not a lot of support from the companies. And as these things go, kind of caregiver problems became our problems. And got to the point where it started to affect the health of my dad. And that's when we knew we couldn't keep her home anymore. And so we had to move to assisted living. And we tried that out. I think in the long run, that was probably the best solution for her. Thankfully, she's still there the last 5 or so years. And how I describe it, when she was home with the aide, she was always safe. Nothing ever happened, but they didn't do a whole lot.
Right.
Just kind of sit and watch TV all day. Dementia would take hold. She kind of sleep the day away, ordering out a lot, so not eating well. And as you know, the assisted livings have more effort put on a structured day and participation, engagement activities. And obviously, we're not curing the Alzheimer's, but what we saw was an improvement in her wellness. And I just like that approach. And so, as I was thinking about getting into this business and trying to figure out a way to differentiate, I kind of like that wellness approach. And so, I'd like to say, most home care companies do a great job of helping someone get through the day, make sure someone's showered and fed and dressed and all that. I just feel like home care should be several steps more than that. So if we can spend time getting to know our clients, incorporate I call them meaningful activities, those things that, everybody loves to do, maybe things they got away from that they'd be interested in getting back into. And that's different for everybody. That doesn't mean we got to go out and do a 5-mile hike every day, but those extra things that we can do and incorporate in our day or in their day are what's going to enhance their day. And that's what I want to be talking to our clients about. How can we enhance your day? How can we improve your wellness? And of course, we're going to do the basics of helping you get through the day, make sure you're showered, etc. But we're going to be remembered for the meaningful activities, the focus on nutrition, safety, all that stuff, much more than we are, as opposed to, we gave a shower to someone every day for,
and I think that you hit the nail on the head on something that I've seen quite a bit with home care agencies is they do the basics, and there might be planned intentions to do more, but the caregiver reverts back to what's the easy thing to do, because there's not a consistent care plan that does push them to do kind of like what you're talking about, right? And I think at
Right.
the end of the day, nobody's means, to not do more, right? There might be intentions there, but that's just kind of what's happening, is they're just reverting back to basic care, sitting down, watching TV, getting the meals out of the microwave type of care. Um, and I think that happens quite a bit. So when you were developing or thinking about this, did you develop this as part of your care plan, or how did you kind of incorporate this so that your caregivers, don't kind of revert back to the basic care?
Yeah, no, I think it's just in the message that comes from me. So, the same story that I just told you is kind of what we tell prospective clients, but it's also the same story that I tell caregivers as to, my motivations for starting the company. And so our hiring process incorporates that. And we talk about our values, and we look for evidence from them throughout the hiring process that this is the type of caregiver they
Yeah.
want to be. We don't want to be the babysitter in the corner, sitting on their
Right.
phone, right? And so I think the consistent message from me, the consistent message from our HR manager, gives them guidance into what we expect when they're out with our clients. And of course, we put that in writing in the care plan in terms of the types of activities
So there
that we
is
want
some
them to
kind of
do.
structure
But
there around that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But again, it's just kind of consistently talking about it, and making sure both on the caregiver side and the client side that they're both getting out of it
So
what
it sounds like to me,
what
and,
they
and
want.
just, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here. It sounds like almost like you're saying, Jeremy, there is some structure there, but besides just, like an SOP, a standard operating procedure or something like that, it's who we are. It's like our DNA. And this is what we continually talk about. So it's not going to go unmissed. We don't need like an SOP, because this is what we do. This is our being, the reason why we're here. Sounds like that's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that's what we strive for. As I think company culture is important. And so again, if everybody's, I use the saying, rowing in the same direction, company has a better chance to grow and succeed. And so, um, that's kind of what we found has worked so far, and I think that's attributed to our growth and um, the reviews that we've gotten back from
That's awesome.
clients.
So, there's so many people that get into home care and then they get bombarded with problems, right? You've got the caregivers that show up, and then you've got to come up, either I've got to go or I've got to come up with a solution. Somebody's got to be there with this client, right? And at the end of the day, that can get really frustrating. It can become like a heavy weight on you. So what gets you excited about your business, about the home care business? What gets you out of bed in the morning?
Yeah, I think it's I would say the basics. Like it certainly started with the idea of being able to help people in a way that my family didn't ultimately experience. Um, and the more we can do that, the more that's going to sort of fill my tank. Is again, because a lot of times, as when you talk to prospective clients, a lot of times they're in some form of
Yeah.
a crisis, and there's a problem that needs to get solved, and so being able to be part of the solution, at least to give them a little bit of a break, or to in the case where someone can't be there almost full time to provide a lot of assistance. That's what gets me going. And then secondary to that, but almost equally important, which I didn't realize until I got into it, was that there's also a great feeling about giving someone a
Right.
job, right? And because I've had multiple conversations with folks who just want to do work, and they just want to do great work, and they want to work for a great company, and they want to be treated right, and so that side of it also is part of kind of the satisfaction
That's
that I get.
awesome. Yeah. My wife, she used to be a caregiver, and she kind of experienced that, working for companies that just didn't care about her, so I always got excited when she ended up finding a home care agency that we actually ended up doing marketing for, and then blew them up. It was a 3-person team, and they're awesome, awesome family, and similar reasons why they got into home care, and some of those reasons are some of the same reasons I got into home care, right, into digital marketing for home care agencies.
Yeah.
I cared for my mom. I did a lot of her home care. And one of the main reasons was, my mom didn't want caregivers to do the care for her. She wanted me to do it. And I didn't, there's a delicate balance there of, being there for your mom, but then having some boundaries because you can't be there 24 hours a day, right? My wife was pregnant at this time when I was doing care for my mother, and this is about 3 years ago. She had end-stage renal failure, end-stage heart failure, congestive heart failure. So at the end of the day, she went from being able to walk to having to walk with a cane to having to walk with a walker to having to being transported in a wheelchair and then being able to stand and walk short distances to where she couldn't even stand up on her own. And then finally, she ended up, being in a bed and not being able to get out of the bed. So I had to learn how to change her diapers. And so I went through that whole transitionary phase of care with her. And emotionally, it was very hard for me. We had My Choice, which was the home care agency my wife worked for that we did marketing for here in Tulsa. And but my mom didn't want them there certain hours. So after 5 of working with home care agencies on their digital marketing with my team, after 5, I would walk in there and I would provide care for about another 4 hours. And then I'd get maybe an hour with my pregnant wife. So it's one of those things where it excites me starting a home care agency because, My Choice did an incredible job, but I have seen these companies that, do the babysitting type care, right? And we didn't get that type of care. There was one caregiver that was from My Choice that kind of reverted back to that. And I didn't even have to say anything to the owners. I guess they had some kind of check-in process to check in with their caregivers.
Right.
And they identified that was happening. And the owner also came, which were, friends of ours because we were doing their marketing, and we became friends over the years, and they came over and checked in personally
Yeah.
as well. So at the end of the day, they fixed that caregiver that was on her phone, not paying as much as attention that she needed to. I didn't have to say anything. And I think that's super
Right.
important too, is to have some kind of process to check in on that. And there's different ways to do it. I don't, I'm just getting started on the home care agency side, on the care side of things, but I don't know what all those are, but I feel like that's super important to have something where you can find out if people are reverting back. But I also feel like having it as the company culture, the core focus is key. Like what you were
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah. No, I think all that's important, right? Especially early on, I sort of preach the importance of communication. Um, and in this case with the client, early and often checking in and stopping in and seeing how things are going. We have an idea, or I have an idea of what should be happening on those visits, and I can verify that by having conversations with them. And obviously, I also do that on the caregiver side too. And so again, the the story
Right.
should match, right? But I think clients like the check-ins, and caregivers too as well, especially if a caregiver is new to our company. After the first shift, how did things go today? A few days later, how are things going, right? And just ensuring that they're getting out of it what they wanted as well, I think is
Mm,
important, right? I talk a lot about sort of two sides of the coin, right? You've got the client side and then the caregiver side, and both of those have to get something out of it. It has to work for both sides. And so one of the ways to ensure that is just to stay in
mm-hmm.
touch,
Yeah.
early and often. Um, and and again, I think that's a way as an owner is to build equity with both sides, is again those check-ins. And again, it's not meant to, make sure that they're, it's a friendly thing. Hey, how are
Right.
things going? And I think it's appreciated on both sides. At least that's the feedback that
Yeah.
we've
Yeah.
gotten.
Makes sense. So you mentioned earlier a little bit about your company culture, and it's more than just babysitting, and you talked about that in your sales process, or when you first meet them. Break down a little bit for me, if you're able to, what it looks like on a phone call, and then what it looks like from the phone call to the home care assessment to a signed agreement, that whole kind of process. Kind of walk us through that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, again, the vast majority of our initial conversation or initial interaction is a phone conversation, right? And the purpose of that call is what you would expect. It's for me to start to understand if this is a good client for our company, not only from perspective of can we help them, but um, what they're looking for and what their goals are. And so a lot of it starts with me just listening and having them kind of tell their story and what's going on, and me kind of guiding them through that with questions, right, that are sort of intended to help them talk, but also help me understand if it's the right fit, and understand how we can help them. Because as they start to identify certain things, whether it's as simple as assisting them with a shower, meal preparation, medication reminders, as I'm taking those notes, then now I've got some talking points that I'm going to go back to towards the end. But um, you know, walking them through that initial conversation where I'm doing most of the listening, and then kind of switching it and um, telling them my story and why I got into it, right? Because um, an advantage, which is certainly not unique to me, but because my family went through it, I've been on their
Well,
side
I
as
do feel
well.
like that is
And
an
so
advantage,
when
because
I,
I don't feel like some of the franchises are sharing that part. They're sharing, here's what we do, here's what we charge. But sharing your personal story in there, why you got into it, I think is an advantage, because that's not happening really on the franchise side of things.
yeah, yeah, I mean, that's great for me. But yeah, I mean, again, I want to share that because it hopefully lets them know that we're in it for the right reasons too, right? And so, again, if I'm able to share my story, and then kind of coming out of that, start to go back to the points that were important to them. Um, yes, we can do the dressing, and yes, we can do the med reminders, and yes, we can take them out and all that. Now they start to hopefully think, well, they start to envision us as a potential solution
Right.
for them. Um, and then from there you can kind of go into some more details around schedule and pricing. But the hope is to get them to a point where they feel comfortable allowing us to come
Hmm.
visit them, because that's kind of the next step, is where we would go to the home, meet them. Um, and again, you're always trying to inch forward or inch towards you know
Right.
that agreement where yes, we're ready to start services. So generally that's what it is, but that's a little bit more
Gotcha.
about how we do it.
What kind of follow-ups, and you kind of touched on it a little bit. You've got some follow-ups, it sounds like, with caregivers to check in, to see how things are going on their first day. Do you do any follow-ups after the first day for your caregivers, like once a quarter,
Yeah,
once a
sure.
month?
I mean, again, yeah, no, I think, again, it's probably
Oh,
weekly, that first month at least. Um, it's just kind of baked into my day. It's not, and as you may know, most caregivers love texting, right? So it's 5 seconds for me to send a quick text to someone to say, hey,
yeah,
how are things going? Or follow up on something that we discussed last week. So um, again, just kind of devoting time to that each day, I think, is important. Um, the check-ins, I think, are important, but again, that's kind of how we do it. And again, similarly on the client side too.
gotcha. What do you attribute some of your growth to?
Yeah. So for us, I mean, we started with you within the first year. I mean, it was in the first 4, 5, 6 months that we started with you guys. And it's it's tough starting a home care business right now, just because there's incredible competition, especially where we are in kind of southwestern Connecticut. Um, there's a
Yeah.
lot of agencies around, so I remember that first 6 months was just a lot of me cold calling, and I was coming from a different industry, um, and so I can just imagine on the other end, the people taking a call from me. Here's a new guy trying to start a home care company, um, and he's got no experience, and why am I going to give my business to
Right.
him, right? So, but eventually, you start to make headway, but I think a big thing for us, um, at least, I mean, again, this is our story. It was two things. Certainly, the help we got from you, to get our site to tell a story, about, kind of take someone through the journey of why, home care is important, and why we can
Mhm.
help them through that journey. Um, then the kind of the SEO side and the Google Ads side, right? That was important for us. And I think I remember early on you and I spoke, and I don't remember the exact time frame, but within the first week or so, we started showing up on organic listings, and we had, never done that before. So again, that is important, but
Right.
that takes time, as you know, and but that's how we started to get some of our first clients. And then, yeah, I mean, back then we had to kind of rely on some of the internet, um, companies, carrying.com, a place for mom, to just send us some leads, right? Try to get some clients that
So
way.
as
And
many
then,
leads as you can get
we
from
did.
digital, you're trying to get, it sounds like.
Yeah, yeah, and then we were lucky to forge a couple good relationships with folks at hospitals, and those kind of helped as well. But that's kind of how it started, and then it kind of builds from there. And certainly putting a focus on reviews and getting those reviews online, right? That all feeds into getting noticed more. But right now, um, Google is one of our top referrers of new clients, and, we've seen over time that the quality of those has improved. So,
And one of those, yeah,
whatever you're doing, yeah, whatever you're doing in the background, it's getting folks who are more
yeah,
ready to make
yeah.
that decision, and that's allowed us to,
And
to take
so to
advantage of
speak
that.
on that, one thing that we always can do, and we do this with our clients, like you said, over time it gets better. And what we've been able to do is really refine a process with Google Ads. So when clients are looking for services, right? There's going to be all kinds of different keywords at different for those potential clients. They're going to be at different stages. So for us, we want to make sure that and the interesting thing here too, and I don't want to get too off track here. We're going to use the same systems that we use for you for our home care agency, right? There's not going
Right.
to be something different, or special that we do for ourselves that we don't do for our clients. And over time with Google Ads, you can really refine the types of keywords that's coming in to block certain keywords that's not good, that would never potentially be a client, right? And to give you an example, some clients will say, well, I don't want Medicaid. Some clients will say, sure, send them on in, right? But most home care agencies are going to say, don't want Medicaid, right? And so there's certain keywords that we know, just being in the home care space, that they're drivers of generating Medicaid type leads. And so if that's a thing, we now have a really good refined process over time. We just know how to get those blocked so it's not wasting. And then the majority of the clicks that do come in, like you said, are very closer to the finish line of getting, maybe a home care assessment, or soon getting a home care assessment. So it's good to hear that. Good to hear that.
Right.
So
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think just
yeah,
one more thing. I think your background and experience in home care helps greatly with that. Because again, there are tons of companies that out there that do, digital marketing, right? Help with
sure.
Google Ads. I'm sure a number of them are fantastic, but if they don't know what to look for, how to set it up, how to structure it, monitor it, all that specific to home care, then I think you're going to be at a bit of a
Right.
disadvantage.
Yeah. And that is true. And that is one reason why we did niche down. We used to be a general marketing agency, and we'd help doctors, lawyers. I mean, you name the company, and we'd get them success. But there was always a limit of success that we could reach, right? Unless we really, really understood that niche. And so niching down the home care, we did this about 8 years ago. It really helped us know some of these things, like the Medicaid type stuff I was telling you about. There's certain keywords that will drive those types of clicks that the keyword itself on Google doesn't necessarily say, hey, I'm looking for Medicaid home care, right? It's a different keyword, but a lot of the people searching that keyword are needing Medicaid type care. So just knowing the industry, like you said, helps out a lot too. And then you get that upper advantage. So in closing, I want to wrap it up here. Thank you for being here, Brian. Thank you for being on the podcast. If there's one tip that you could give somebody that's starting their home care agency, what would you tell them to do?
One tip. I would understand kind of your reason why you're doing it. And for me, again, I use that as a way to differentiate. Because inevitably, most places there's going to be competition out there. And so you have to stand out. And so in how you run your business and what you stand for, I think is one way to do that. So I think for me, I developed that over the first, 4, 5, 6 months. How am I going to start to talk about my business? How am I going to sell it? And then, I've seen this elsewhere, and this applies to any business, but know what you're good at and know what, especially for me, starting out as an independent company, I was wearing all the hats, right? And so my time was spent on everything. And if you've started a business,
Yeah.
there's a lot that goes
Oh
into
yeah.
starting the business. And so the one, I think, great thing about this industry is that there is so much attention on it. There is so much assistance out there that you can, as one person, start a home care business. You can have Grow Home Care Marketing do your digital, right? You can have, and again, this is just what we use. We use WellSky to run our platform, the scheduling, payroll,
Sure.
all that stuff, right? You can have a payroll company. And so you've got modules that you can work and manage as one person. And so it's just kind of understanding all that and deciding which ones are best for you. But there's plenty of resources out
And it
there
sounds like the key
that can help you
is
get there.
identifying as quickly as possible a differentiator in the marketplace. It sounds like that's kind of
Yeah,
your key note that you're passing along there. Yep.
that's number one,
Yeah, I think
right?
that's super
That's number
important
one.
because as people are calling around, they're looking for home care agencies, and the brain is trying to compare apples to apples prices, right? But the differentiators help the person make a decision really at the end of the day. What's different about this apple compared to that apple? And so,
Right.
especially when you're starting out, that's very difficult in my opinion because you don't have those years of experience backing you. So your story, I feel like, helped you a lot on that side of things, having that differentiator, how you care for people because of this with my mother, right? This is what I've
Right.
experienced, and so now we're
Right.
implementing it. So I feel like that's key. Well, thank you so much, Brian, for being on here on the Grow Home Care
Of
Marketing
course.
Podcast. We really appreciate you as a client. If you want to find out more information about our company, or if you ever want to be on one of these podcasts, go to our website, growhomecaremarketing.com. We appreciate you. Thanks for watching. Have a blessed day.